For coming. So, I am going to be talking about teaching through a wellness-centered approach today, and I am Dr. Jessica Harris, and I am an assistant professor in the Department of Health Promotion and Wellness. So it kind of comes naturally already, the wellness-centered approach, but throughout my work with CELT, it's very prevalent that there's an alignment really with inclusive pedagogy and teaching and equity-minded teaching and the wellness-centered approach. So we're going to talk about some small, simple steps that you can really add to your classroom and which can really help, in sense of belonging and also resilience for our students and helping lower stress and anxiety as well. But before we get started, I wanted to share this quote by James Lang. He says, so this actually came from the Higher Ed podcast. It was in August of 2024, and it was titled "The Working the Gardens of Our Classrooms." I think it was episode 529, if I'm correct. And he mentions, in the meantime, the gardens need tending. If you continue to believe in the value of the plants that have always flourished in your garden, keep growing them. And I found this really, kind of important when we talk about, wellness-centered teaching, because it aligns beautifully with, this wellness-centered approach. It reminds us to tend to the immediate needs of our students rather than getting caught up in, the larger abstract debates of perfectionism and pedagogy. But really, a wellness-centered approach is about meeting students where they are and recognizing that their well-being is essential for learning. And that wellness alignment here is really, check in with your students, adapt our teaching strategies, recognize that taking small, consistent actions, with flexible course policies, those types of things can really be helpful in their success, and questions in regards to, what we can ask our students, even with this, thinking about an area in their life that needs tending like a garden. What can they do to nurture their well-being and personal growth this semester? So just even looking at this quote, it kind of reminds me of ways that we can bring that into our students as well. So welcome everyone. So thank you for being here. So right off the bat, I'm starting off with kind of a wellness check-in. So as you can see here, we have a little scale on a scale of guinea pig. How are you feeling today? So in the chat, if you could put if you're a 1, a 2, a 3, all the way to 9 on a scale of guinea pig, who are you today? How are you feeling? We got a 7, a 1, 3, 5. 5, 8, yeah. I really like number 8 too, Eric, it's a good one. 3, awesome, great. So this obviously a really cool way to just kind of check in with your class right in the beginning. A great way to use kind of the wellness centered approach. When we look at wellness centered teaching, really what it is it acknowledges, students' mental, emotional, physical well-being, which directly impacts their academic performance. And starting off a class session by opening it up is a great way for a little bit of humor, a little bit of discussion, and can kind of ease, any stressors or things that they may have about the class period. And you can make it fun. There's so many other ones of these. If you guys would like me to share, I can send them a later. But there's on a scale of SpongeBob, what are you feeling today? And they have different ones, but very simple and quick, and a practical thing that you can just add in the beginning of any class. So given that, starting class with quick wellness check-ins. So really the strategy here is beginning with a short kind of low stakes wellness check-in that can help students reflect on their well-being, feel connected to the learning environment. And there's multiple ways that you can do this. As you can see, it was really quick. I had you put in the chat, which one you were. And I could have kind of probed a little bit more and went on with the students about that. But you can do it in a multitude of ways. Some different types of implementation tips could be using iClickers, Poll Everywhere, Padlet, sticky notes for anonymous responses. There's tons of different, inclusive ways that we can use technology to do wellness check-ins, whether you have a face-to-face or an online course. As you can see here, an example that I often do is check-in surveys, almost like a kind of mid-course evaluation at the same time. And I still call it a wellness check-in. I did this with my grad students because classes a lot of times, if there's a lot of assignments and things are happening, I want to know where my students are at. I want to know how confident they're feeling about the material. I want to know, have they been able to keep up with the course material? And I want to add questions like that because that is connected to their wellness, right? It's connected to their academic success, but it's also allows me as the professor to see what's going on and what maybe I need to kind of tend to or help with. I like to keep them anonymous, and when I see kind of the anonymous responses, I'll look at the graph after I use kind of Google Forms, and then I will make a change in my class and I'll send out an announcement. I saw that a lot of people were struggling with this, so I'm going to make this change in this class. And I think that's really important. And it doesn't have to be classes, right? When we're staff or anyone on campus, quick check ins with our students, asking them, how they are is just really important. It shows that we care, and it also can help, increase their sense of belonging too with being on our campus. So, understanding student wellness. So, why teaching with a wellness centered approach? So, with the National College Health Association data from spring 2024, this is nationally, top stressors for students: academics, procrastination, finances. We've heard about finances a lot, on our campus. We've seen that with the holds and registration accounts, those types of things. This is the reality for our students. And not being able to enroll in classes, that is directly related to academic stress, right? High distress from issues, again, academics, career, personal appearances, and also other psychological distress, right? We're having students, who are reporting serious distress, loneliness, well-being issues, lowest well-being scores. So it is very important for us as faculty to know what's going on, and Michelle, yep, Shelley says, right in line with national stressors. Yep. So yes, Michael, political distress as well. Yes. I don't know if it particularly includes that. It wasn't a question on that survey, but I assume that that is definitely included in that. And when we think about this and what happens in our classroom, we're seeing our students, whether it's 2 times a week, 3 times a week. It's important for us to see what we can do to help in that regard. And there's way for us to align this into our curriculum. And that's really kind of the strategies that we can help in building resilience and growth mindset and all of these things to really kind of help our students, in that regard. So things you can do before the semester starts in your courses to really help with this, wellness centered teaching approach. So when we look at, different types of, oops, sorry. When we look at flexible and compassionate course policies, when we're creating our syllabi, when we're looking at, how we're setting up our bright space courses, it's really important for us to be flexible but also compassionate in the way that we kind of use our language. One strategy is really to incorporate, flexible policies, whether it's around attendance, deadlines, and grading, to account for students' personal challenges, but also promote resilience. And that doesn't mean that you have to remove rigor in doing this, right? What this means is simply changing our language, being a little bit more compassionate in how we relay our information. Again, when we look at the syllabus, there's a lot of legalese, information in there, really trying to just give information, let them know that we are, here for them. Those types of things can be just really helpful. And it's a way to create that kind of wellness centered classroom. So we know that students are facing a variety of personal and academic issues, whether it's mental health, struggles, caregiving responsibilities, work commitments, unexpected life events that happen. And by incorporating this type of flexibility into our policies, we're recognizing those realities for our students and really providing them with tools to help kind of manage stress and build resilience while still holding them accountable for their learning. So some examples here that I've used in the past has been looking at, grace periods for assignments. You know, Offer a 24 to 72-hour grace period for all major assignments with no explanation required. You could do a token system for this, right? Number four, kind of a token system for late work, where ultimately students can request one or two deadline extensions per semester without penalty or explanation. This takes into consideration our students, and I have a lot of students who are full-time working adults. I have students who are full-time caregivers at home, that are providing for themselves for college, that are working full time. And Ben looks like he's done the tokens. It's helped a lot. That's wonderful to hear. These are great ways to really acknowledge kind of the reality for our students today. And the students have evolved, right? We have a different type of student today in higher ed that have a lot going on and a lot on their plate. So, flexible attendance policies, moving away maybe from strict attendance to maybe wellness days, adding some wellness days in there, or breaks within the class for mental health or personal reasons, right? And I give some syllabus language here for grace periods and the token systems for late work. Also, open communication for extensions. I mentioned in my syllabus, and I use the statement, life happens. You know, if you're struggling, let me know. And there's things that are happening in students' lives where they may need extensions beyond what we require in the student handbook for sports and religious activities, right? So letting them know that you're here for them and you understand that life happens because it happens to us, right? I have the flu and RSV right now, so life happens. And so in that regard, it's really important that we are kind of showcasing that for our students and that we can be that mentor for them if needed as well. So being clear about the language and showing compassion, and these are just some examples of how you can do so, you know, in your syllabus moving forward. So other kind of flexible course policies that I've done before, second chance policies on exams or major assignments, and then also flexible participation options. One strategy for the second chance is really allowing students to revise or resubmit. I really do like this. I also try and do any big assignment that I have. I like to give students the option to send it to me to look it over, those types of things. You know, it kind of acknowledges that learning is a process. It encourages growth, and that's what I want my students to have, right? So, giving kind of the example of you may revise and resubmit one major assignment in the semester for up to half the lost points. That opportunity is designed to help them learn from feedback and improve their work. That's a great way to kind of implement that, you know, in in your classroom. And these are great, you know, inclusive, you know, teaching strategies, but also it's related to their wellness, right? Giving them options that may reduce the stress and anxiety of a major exam or a major assignment is really important. Even two stage exams, I know, you know, John's talked about a lot, and he probably has a session coming up with that too. Those are great ways too, where you have the students, you know, work together, and then they work by themselves, then in a group with that exam, those types of things. There's multiple different ways to kind of lower that anxiety with the way that we create our assignments and our policies within our syllabus. Flexible participation is another one. Multiple providing more than one way for our students to participate is really important. This can include discussion boards, written reflections, group activities, and it doesn't have to be the standard, oh, I'm going to call on you in class type of participation. Not everybody's comfortable with that. There's fear in that for a lot of students, so having a lot of flexible options is really important within our courses. You know, whether it's even discussion boards, if you're in a face-to-face class and you have a discussion board that's online and they're able to, you know, maybe discuss with each other, you know, virtually because they're not, you know, wanting to do so in class. That's a great way to kind of help reduce that anxiety and still allow the student to provide great information and their own thoughts and engage in that discussion with their peers. So, example syllabus language here is participation is essential, but it looks different for everyone, right? You can participate by contributing to class discussions, posting in the discussion board, or submitting reflection notes. Please choose the format that works best for you. That's a great way to kind of open that up and allow them some ownership too, you know, of what they are able to do. Yeah, Michael, you mentioned email. Did you want this to be emailed? I can do that. Yes. You're talking about the PowerPoint? No? Okay. Oh, email proper. Yeah, you could. Yeah, there's multiple ways that you could do that if you wanted to do email in that regard, if they want to do it that way. I would give, specific task with that and context around it so they know exactly what the requirement is for that. But yeah, there's multiple ways that you could do participation for that. Yep. All right. So the next thing is really looking at building a wellness foundation. So again, like I said, using that language in the syllabus, being flexible, what it does is, it really can help students when the first day of class they notice that their professor, has statements like life happens, and they're able to kind of open that communication. A lot of students are more encouraged to want to go to that class and open up to you as a professor. What I've done is add lots of things to my syllabus. This example here is even for my online course in Brightspace. In my course information, I have a whole section on safety, civility, and community responsibility. Um, a lot of this language, thank you to Mallory Bauer. Her name's down there, got cut off, but a lot of it came from her too. And what it looks like in your wellness statement. Putting a wellness statement in your syllabus is a great way to let them know that you find an importance in their well-being, and you're encouraging them to, balance not only their academics but their self-care, and also highlight our wonderful resources that we have on campus. There's so many places that we can offer and support students and help students, and letting them know where those locations are important. And here, I have something that I've done here where I talk about, as a Laker, we want you to take ownership of your personal well-being, and care for our community, learning a learning friendly environment, talk about that, sticking up for your peers, all of those different things, and also highlight health and wellness here. You don't owe me an explanation, about your health, mental or physical. You're always welcome and encouraged to talk to me about things you're going through. However, if I can't help you, I usually know someone who can, so I can always refer, right? And if you need extra help and you need to miss class, I'll try and work with you. Promise, letting them know that yes, I do try to be flexible, and I want them to know that they can come to me in that regard. So that's something that I put in my syllabus. So there's multiple ways that you can put a wellness statement in your syllabus to let them know that it is a priority in your class. If you don't know exactly what you want to put in your syllabus for a wellness statement, a great activity, with your class, or in groups, is to have them create the wellness statement. This is a way for you to kind of identify exactly what they need, as students in that semester in your class, and then they've created that policy for you in the course. And then you could also have students come back to share ideas with the larger group for feedback on what that wellness, statement will look like. But this is a great hands-on practice to kind of help them identify that information as well. So in week one, kind of setting the tone. So starting to kind of add things into the first week, what can we do to kind of let them know, about the class, and also give a little bit of that wellness centered, introductions. So what I do is I do kind of speed dating in a way in my in-person classes. I call it mindful meetup though. They get different questions, and I kind of take all of the 8 wellness dimensions, and I have questions in there where they are able to kind of do speed dating. They have 60 seconds on the clock. I pull it up from YouTube, and instead of a traditional icebreaker, I'm asking them to introduce themselves by sharing a wellness tip with each other. It helps them kind of stay grounded, and it's a great way for them to kind of share things, and a great way for them to kind of get to know a little bit more about their peers in the class. Now, I also throw some funny ones in there sometimes as well, but it's a great way for them to really kind of hear new things and also get to know people. So I've had students be like, "Oh yeah, you do CrossFit, or you're in the gym," or those types of things, or, "Oh, I've never thought about that," or things like that. So it's a great way to do a non-traditional icebreaker, but also add in the wellness centered introductions. And that's been really successful for me, but I think making the course content personally relevant, to students, it's going to improve engagement, retention, and academic performance. So if we're able to add things in that, they're doing and it's more relevant for them, it's going to be a great way for them to kind of want to engage more in the class and be excited to come to the class. So ongoing, incorporating wellness into content. So this is your projects, your assignments, those types of things. So reflective assignments. So incorporating those reflective assignments, I think, are really important. And I did a lot of this semester, and I have a whole other workshop later. This week or next week, I think, on the Metacognitive Cafe, something I learned from John Kane and Judith Littlejohn. But reflective assignments, I use the Metacognitive Cafe in a way to be more of a reflective assignment, not only on maybe on their overall wellness, but it could be related to, their academics at the same time, kicking off the journey and kind of things that they want to learn, those types of things. Reflective assignments, help them connect to the course content, and also their personal experiences and wellness practices. There's ways to embed that and still be about your course content and your discipline. Using prompts like that for low stakes, whether it's low stakes journal entries, discussion boards, final reflections, or even exit tickets, right? Muddiest points, metacognitive cafes. These are all great ways to have reflection help them build self-awareness and resilience in class, which are critical for managing stress and promoting academic success. So I like to use the Metacognitive Cafe in classes, and I'll do those types of discussion boards in my online as well. As you can see here, this one was as we kick off our journey in the course, let's break, the ice with some introspection, reflecting on your decision to pursue graduate health promotion, behavioral wellness studies, what motivated you on this path, how do you envision your knowledge, your skills impacting the community or field of work. All of this, has them thinking, you know, about course content, but also where they're at and where they want to be, what's fascinating, and again, making it personally relevant and allowing them time to kind of open up is a great way for that engagement. And again, I think keeping things like this low stakes is really good, because when we do low stakes assignments, again, it reduces stress, it reduces those anxiety levels, and it's something that they know that they can put their reflective piece in and they know they're going to do a good job. And if there's points associated with it, it's low stakes and they can also have fun with what they're putting in there. And I think that's really important for our students. Structured wellness breaks. So when it comes to wellness breaks, I do a lot of different things in my classes. I create planned days within my syllabus, or some days it's portions of class where students use the time to work fully on an assignment that we've went over and we went over on the lecture with. And this is a time where the student can specifically work on the task that they've been assigned, but also with my guidance and support. So there's a way to set a timer in the classroom and do it that way, or schedule breaks into your lesson plan. What I have done is I've provided a structure in my syllabus for most of my classes. As you can see here, I highlighted in green. So for example, this was from my fall semester class. We went over Previously in that week, we went over a lot about needs assessments and lectures. We did activities, and then they were presented, with the paper formatting for the needs assessment, kind of a content review of it. And then I gave them an out of class work day. And we also had in-class work days with that as well, but I like to use that as a specific task day. There's something for them to do, but it's also a little bit of a wellness break for them because it is a larger assignment. We went over it, for a couple of weeks prior to this, and then giving them some time outside of class after I've already, worked with them with guidance and support has been really helpful for my students. And I've noticed that It actually has reduced, anxiety and issues for them because, again, like I said in the beginning, a lot of our students, have a different type of life where they have a full-time job, they're taking care of people, so sometimes they do need that extra time, and everyone has that time if it's during that class period where they can use that. So that's the way I built it in. I build in kind of out of class work days for specific assignments, which are like wellness breaks, I believe. And also, you'll see here in week 11, I do group work on intervention assignment, right? That's where I'm going around in the class. They have a specific task. They're working together in a group because they were given an interventions assignment that needs to be due. And I give them that time that day as I walk around with guidance and support. And I also kind of find that as a little bit of a wellness break too, because in the grand scheme of things, allowing them time to do it is really important, right? Because their schedules are full, there's anxiety already. So giving them that time or giving them extra time is really helpful. And I think providing those structured wellness breaks is good. Not only if it's in the classroom, but also in your own day to day activities as instructors, faculty, and staff. Implementing wellness breaks for yourself is really important. So keep those in mind. So incorporating things like projects and assignments. So wellness integrated assignments, I try and do a lot with this. And yes, it definitely is a win-win, Kim. um, the strategy I use here for those integrative assignments is really embedding wellness related examples and discussions into my course content. But you can do this regardless of the discipline. So I know I already am in health and wellness, so it's very easy for me to do this already. But even if you're in history or business or the STEM field, I give examples here as well. You know, business, explore workplace wellness programs and their impact on productivity. And that can kind of open up, also personal relevance for students if they're interested in certain wellness programs or health topics, those types of things. But it's also related to their discipline. History, analyze how historical figures manage stress and resilience. There's so many kind of fun, unique ways that you can bring it into the classroom. And I've recognized while doing this, I have a lot of students open up more about things that are going on in their life, and I'm able to help them more in, kind of completing tasks or, helping them, follow through and overcome an obstacle that may have been challenging for them. And this can be very helpful for our students. It can help with retention, if we're making things personally relevant for them, but we're also letting them know that they're open to coming to us and talking to us, that we are a campus that cares about their wellness, I think is really important. STEM fields discussing the importance of sleep or exercise, cognitive function, even when we look at our tech fields, it could be creating a wellness app or, different types of software code or something. So there's tons of ways that you can kind of introduce it into the class setting with an assignment and really kind of relay that, wellness information, to the students in that regard. So I like to do the wellness integrative assignments too, because a lot of times that can help, with them and foster kind of that community and discussing wellness and can kind of help with, breaking that stigma of different mental health issues or things like that, depending on what, the activity is, and gives them practical strategies that they really can, try in that regard. So again, other reflective assignments, like I said, using those reflective assignments, again, low stakes journal entries can be metacognitive cafes. Some other types of prompts that I'll do is thinking about challenges that maybe they're going through, how they approach a situation, but relating it to what we're talking about that week in class. So, how does what we've discussed in class this week relate to overcoming challenges in your personal life or your future career? Really kind of aligning it back to those things can really help with that reflection, that self awareness and resilience, which really is critical, for students in managing their stress. But also, even if these are private journal entries, it's a great way for your students to be able to communicate with you. I know Amy Bidwell in my department with her classes, with her Thrive classes, those types of things. And I think Shelley, you probably do similar things. You see a lot when students are being able to do a journal reflection that just you're going to see. They give you a lot of information, and a lot of times it's helpful, to get to know that student a little bit better and also help guide them on where they need to go for resources, because there may not be any other place on campus they feel that they can express themselves in that way. So I find that to be really helpful with first year students as too. With these reflective assignments, they're helpful moving forward with that. Class discussions focused on kind of resilience and problem solving. So when it comes to incorporating resilience building questions, I like to add these into class discussions. I like to frame questions, about critical thinking and problem solving, really to help connect material to overcoming challenges in their academic and personal lives. And a lot of times it's discussion examples, it's case studies I bring in. Again, I use it in different ways like warm-up prompts, it could be eye clicker questions, and again, it's related to my course content, but I'm also making sure there's a little bit of health and wellness in there, right? And that's something you can do even if you're history, computer science. There's ways to kind of incorporate those small tasks, like I said in the beginning with James Lang, we know with his small teaching. Same thing when it comes to integrating wellness, into the classroom. Providing small tips, small tricks, to implement can be really helpful. So, how might the concepts, we've discussed help you manage challenges in your future career? What strategies from today's lesson could you apply to overcome obstacles in your own life? How can failure to be a valuable learning experience, both in the course and life, and kind of opening up maybe discussion about that, doing think, pair, share, in the classroom with students. Now, everything that we've talked about may not scream wellness to you, but it is associated with wellness in any of those 8 wellness dimensions, and can really help our students with engagement and really a sense of belonging. I think when we start to provide more active learning tools and authentic learning opportunities in the classroom, and it helps with not only retrieval practices but can also help, sense of belonging, which impacts, our students and their overall health and well-being. And in one of the reading groups, that we had, I forget which one it was, John, but we did see that I think it was equity minded teaching actually, that if students are more likely to, have better health and wellness if they have a mentor at the college level, those types of things. They have better health and wellness after, they graduate, those types of things. So it's important for us not only to, be that instructor and give them that course content, but also be someone that's helping them, in the process with their overall wellness and well-being on our campus. So, strategies to create a positive, engaging learning environment that prioritizes wellness. So, a lot of what we've talked about will help you do that, but there's some other specific things. Oh yeah, and John said it may have been Sarah Rose Kavanaugh's book too, because also just a plug for the reading group. There's a lot of different great, reading group books that we've done that really incorporates. Wellness center teaching into those books too, because like I said, there's a clear alignment with, active learning, inclusive pedagogy, and, wellness centered teaching approach. So strategies to really create that positive, engaging learning environment that really prioritizes wellness in the classroom. Fostering a supportive classroom environment through your language, I think is really important. Like we said in the syllabus, using flexible policies and compassionate language. Again, using that inclusive and compassionate language when creating your classroom culture really prioritizes wellness and mental health. And, an implementation tip on ways to do that, excuse me, would be, adding that wellness statement to your syllabus, using supportive statements, I give some examples. Instead of saying, you should have started this assignment earlier. If, a student comes to you with a late assignment or something like that, try saying, I'm glad you reached out. Let's work together on a plan to move forward. I like to meet with students when things like this happen, to create plans because my ultimate goal is for them to be successful. And I don't want, one certain issue to be the reason that they can't be successful in my course, which then is a snowball effect of not being successful, at SUNY Oswego. Some other ways, instead of saying, "You missed class, so you lost participation points," try stating, "I noticed you missed class. Is there anything I need to support you with?" I do that a lot. If I notice students have ghosted, which I know a lot of us have seen, in the past, years so far, I'll reach out and say, "Hey, I noticed you weren't in class today. Just checking in. Is everything okay?" And a lot of times I get a response. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes, it's hard to contact those students that we just don't see. But I do try and keep track when they're not in class to reach out, "Hey, is something going on?" just in case, to try and catch it. And a lot of times I do get responses from students and they're like, "Yes, this something happened." And we set up a plan. And I feel like that's been really helpful for students. Encouraging that peer support and community building. So, incorporating peer connections into your class. So, giving them time to not feel isolated, but to build a sense of belonging. I cringe when I hear students say, "Oh, I've been in my major for, 3 years and I only know one person." I'm like, "Oh, no, but you're in those classes and you see those people." So, I really like to make sure that students are working together in my class. They know each other's names, and by the time they kind of go through our classes, they know a lot of people in the department, if not everybody, because we like to make sure there's not, feelings of isolation, that they have that sense of belonging. And also, especially when we think about our first year students and really starting early with that, can really encourage them, to want to continue to be at SUNY Oswego and can help with retention as well. So, an implementation tip here, kind of encouraging group or class norms, but also discussing that those class norms should promote kindness, empathy, and respect, right? And it seems something very simple to do, but having those discussions are important, with your students to create that community and encourage peer support. So, some examples: doing peer check ins, pair students to discuss how they're managing stress and share strategies. I've done this when we have really big assignments. Coming up, or a big presentation, I'll have them pair up and talk about, how they're managing any anxiety or stress going with, this assignment or anything outside of that. And I often see the classroom laughing and having discussions, and faces light up where they get good ideas or tips of like what they can do or what somebody else has done. And really, that is really great to see, because the wellness tip sharing is important too. Students are able to kind of share what they've done and what's worked for them, and it also gives them, a peer in the class that they've kind of created a friendship with, which can be really helpful for them. Another way I like to do class norms is in the beginning of the first week of class. I really like students to create those together, right? And talk about what they expect. Not only that, but I do something where obviously we give everyone a syllabus. I do something that's called kind of a course covenant, where it's my syllabus. The students have to tell me what they expect from me as their instructor. And I leave the classroom, and there's one person kind of leading the class, and they're giving examples on how to really go through that process of, what do we expect from, Dr. Harris? What do we want her to provide for us as students? And a lot of times I hear flexibility, I hear open communication, I also hear grading on time. Those types of things really encourage, my community building in the class, but it gives them ownership. And I think that helps with their overall, wellness and health and well being in the course too, because having that ownership is really helpful. And John just put in the chat, it was Sarah Kavanaugh's book, which is Mind Over Monsters, Supporting Youth Mental Health with Compassionate Challenge. Shout out to that book. It was very great, very eye opening, and a lot of, information that I've learned from that book is in this PowerPoint as well. From James Lang, even with small teaching, a lot of those things are incorporated in here as well. So great book there, if you're interested. So another major thing, I know we all have the requirements that we have to put into our syllabi, but I take it a little bit beyond that. And I do a lot of things, but there's just a little tidbit here. Regularly sharing resources and information is really important. I had a student say to me, who's graduated now, but he goes, I know it's important when it's brought up in class. He goes, so the emails that I get from campus, I kind of disregard because if it's important, it's going to be brought up in one of our classes. So I'm like, oh, well, you probably should still be checking the emails. But it just goes to show that, as a department, we're cognizant of making sure that we regularly share the information in class. And I think students like that because that can be an open discussion about, oh, where's that location? When is that being held? Those types of things. So when there's wellness things going on, we talk about those, but also other things like the grants that are going to be coming out, or the scholarships, excuse me, that come out in February. Those, again, those types of things are directly related to their wellness. We talked about financial, being a big stressor, making sure that we promote that for our students so that they know there's a strategy for them to be financially well on campus, and mentioning those in our classes because that's the direct link we have to our students. Really important. So that type of offering resources is important, I think, to do. Not just the typical syllabus ones where we say, hey, counseling services, this is the number, those are the things, but really giving a resource list, whether it's in your syllabus or even on your Brightspace page, highlighting wellness events that are taking place on campus. Sometimes I'll have students pop in that are doing things on campus and let us know, or clubs, students that are a part of clubs in our class to do a shout out in class about it. But I also like to make sure that I tell students where to go for shop, um, food, sexual health products, those types of things, um, library resources, tutoring appointments, those types of things, basic links that we put in there. But also, like I said, the main thing is sharing those resources, whether it's an announcement through Brightspace or, having a conversation in the classroom has been really important. So I wanted to open it up for, any questions, but I also wanted to see if there was any discussion on things that you have done already for your classes in regards to wellness. And it is the helping Oz students helping Oz peers, Michael. Yep, thanks, Michelle. That's what it stands for. Yep. And it is currently in the basement of the Penfield Library. So that's where students can go to get resources if needed. Yep. So I wanted to open it up. Oh, and one on Syracuse campus as well. Awesome. That's perfect. So, any type of wellness strategies that you have all tried before?
I tried making sure that if a student didn't do so well on any one exam or missed an entire exam, that they would get the opportunity to get that exam made up with the final exam score,
Yeah.
just so
Those,
that students aren't panicking or, trying to, bend over backwards or disrupt their life to make sure that they hit every single exam on the exam dates.
right, right. And I think that's a great strategy too. And, I also am the internship coordinator for our department. And one thing that we did as a department was we added an additional class, for students who maybe were having issues that would prevent them from doing the 120 hours of the internship. We have another class that they are able to take and still graduate. So I know we've also done things, that changes in our curriculum, really, by adding a class that can help students still graduate, if there was some sort of extenuating circumstance with the internship and they couldn't take that, we have a whole other class that we can put them in. And the reason I bring this up is I had a student, just a couple weeks ago who emailed me frantic, who's been taking care of a grandmother who is essentially dying and would not be able to do the internship, and that's the last class they need for graduation. So I'm happy to say that we have, alternative solution to help that student, in regards to this circumstance. So when we think about, teaching with a wellness centered approach, even going back to our departments, what can we do as a whole, as a department, to make this, a supportive, environment for our students, given certain circumstances that may happen and those types of things too. So not just in the classroom, but taking it to the level even of our department or even in the school that we're a part of, and, making that a frame of mind, you know, as Lakers, I think is really important. And John put in the chat too. So we do have a new reading group as well that's going to be happening. The Science of Motivating Young People, which again, I started to look a little bit into this too, and there's definitely again alignment. That's why I love working with John and love working with CELT on campus, because when we think about inclusive pedagogy, when we think about what we're doing in the classroom as teachers, it really is aligned to the overall wellness of our students. And I think that's really important for us to kind of make those connections and making those small changes in our classroom, you know, not only for them, to learn content, but also help their overall well-being is really important. And I think we do a good job, in different areas, on our campus of doing that. And I think just small changes of adding different things can be really helpful. But I wanted to open it up to anything else that you've added in your classrooms before? Not to put Carrie on the spot, but Carrie's in here and she's been in one of my classes before. Um, Carrie, did you have any insight on maybe some of those things that I applied in your class and what they felt like, as a student?
Yeah, I really enjoyed having like the mid-semester check-in because I come from like the dance world and like dance classes, it's always like a body check-in every day before class starts, but never like an academic wise check-in. It was all like very physical based. So having someone actually ask like how are you doing in the class and how is everything going? Is it too much, too less? Do you want more? Do you want less? Like that was really nice to have and I felt very valued in the class by having that.
Yeah, great. And that was something I talked to you, John, about a lot after I did that check in about the responses I got after. But not only getting that information from, students and colleagues, but then actually making a change, based on the feedback you get shows ownership to the students. And I think, when I hear something maybe isn't working or something's too overwhelming, letting them know that I hear you, I see you, I think is really important just in general in life, for even our friendships and who we are. So those are some of the ways that I like to do that in my class as well. Other tips that someone else has used in their classes before about ways to incorporate? Or is there any questions?
My statistics course has sometimes had an incorporated project of statistics, hypothesis testing, regression equations on a topic of the student's own decision, something that means something to them, something they think is important, something that they want to look into further.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely that personal relevance I think is great, especially in a concept, when you're talking about regression and, math and stuff. Great way to really kind of engage them with that. And Michael, did you find that students were more engaged with that type of activity than maybe some of the other things?
They were, especially with some topics that were, deeply personal. One student talked about rape prevention. One student talked about suicide prevention. One student talked about history of marginalized communities. So this was stuff that they seemed very passionate about and they were putting a lot of effort into.
Yeah, that's great. Great to hear. Any other questions?
And to put
Okay.
a plug in for our next session,
Yeah.
Jed Lakeel will be talking about
Yes.
autonomy supportive instruction at 11 o'clock in the same URL. So that is a nice follow-up that ties into Michael's point about giving students more autonomy in terms of their multiple means of action and expression, which is also a UDL concept.
Yes, and I strongly encourage you to go to Jed's session as well because he's doing some great things. Kim, you mentioned holding a class outside. Yes, so great example. Yes, I've done that several times in my classes, and students really enjoy that. I've actually taken them down to the lake. Went down to the Flat Rocks there for a class where we did some meditation. I also in my classes, I have another session, I think, later this week on projects where my students have created health promotion programs on our campus, and they are, you know, out on campus in the community doing things, right, which kind of changes that scenery. But also I've had in my research and evaluation class, research and evaluation, what can I do to incorporate that? We actually did seatbelt observations, so we walked around the town of Oswego, or the city of Oswego, and they were doing observations in that regard. So they were getting physical movement and activity while being able to observe if people were wearing their seatbelts in their vehicles. And we did some evaluation with that and so forth and so on. So those are some ways I incorporate it. And I think even just taking your class out, and I know I've seen classes doing things with science and frisbee outside during the spring. There's tons of cool ways to kind of be innovative and get the students outside of the classroom. They love those days where they're able to maybe just sit out out front in front of Rich or in front of Wilbur and have class. So thinking about ways that you can still, you know, disseminate information to the students but be outside is really cool too. And yeah, not as scenic here as it is as Cornell though. Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, I'm not in wellness studies, so this is all a little new to me. I'm just wondering what the research shows that this stuff targets and improves. So is it that like wellness statements and check-ins and stuff improve? Do we see improvement in terms of mental health outcomes? Do we see improvement in terms of retention? What
Yes.
like where what does the data suggest here?
Both, actually. So both. The students who it helps in improving sense of belonging, which also is attached to retention. When students feel like they belong in your classroom, and also when they feel like they have people that care about them and trust them, they're more likely to stay at that institution. And also mental health outcomes when they are in a class where they're able to have that flexibility and that compassion. We've seen higher results and successful graduations, as opposed to students who did not, in classrooms that were more passive and didn't have, you know, the same type of approaches happening. And I think similarly with any of the kind of like inclusive teaching, adding that to the classroom, we've seen a lot more, you know, success and engagement with students throughout their academic careers at their institutions. Yeah. And then I think, let me see, I had put, I think it's somewhere else, but ultimately we want students really to be able to overcome obstacles. But again, similar, you were in the QPR session, you know, being able to be individuals that can be open to the communication and allow them to be able to have us as a mentor, I think is important.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And like John said, Jed's session is coming up next, right at 11, right, John?
Yes, we're
So
going to stop this session though, so we can get the videos rendered and posted, and then we'll be back in about 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you.
thank you,
And
everyone.
welcome to all the guests from other campuses. We had people
Yes.
from Canton, from Cornell, and from Fredonia here.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.